Thanks very much, Ciancórla, and Minister, best wishes to you in your tenure in this department. I'd be delighted if you had rural affairs on its own, because I think it's that kind of department that requires somebody with the expertise and commitment of yourself. And I do regret that in some of our division and reallocation of departments that we've overloaded some with very important issues, and your own is one of those. So look, the best of luck to you, and we'll try and help you as best we can. Glad to have an opportunity to welcome tonight's bill to put the pandemic unemployment payment on a statutory basis, which is very, very important. It's the lifeline for many, many families, and will be for the foreseeable future until we see the pandemic under some sort of control, be it vaccine or treatments or whatever, as things progress. And of course we all yearn for that very quickly. But there are some anomalies that, you know, from the beginning that I would love to have seen addressed. I mean, the over 66s, for one, is a major issue. I mean, what we would have had, I can think of one small business in Sligo where they were employing 13 people, but it was a family business. The husband and wife ran it. And 11 of those people qualified for the payment, but they, as they were both over 66 and in receipt of the contributory pension which they had paid into for more than 40 years, the system adjudged them to have had enough. And I think it would have only been reasonable for over 66s that are still making such a contribution to society that we'd make up the difference between that and the full rate of payment as it would have applied. I can't imagine that it would be a vast amount of money, but I think in terms of moral justice and fairness, and an acknowledgement of these people who have chosen not to hang up the boots at 66, but rather to continue with their expertise, be them small business owners or whatever, in contributing to society, creating employment, and we effectively penalise them for that in what may be the twilight of their working careers. And if this bill doesn't afford you the opportunity to do it, I very much hope that you would have that costed and at least outline to us how much that would cost. And if we can't do it, why we can't do it, because to me it would seem only fair. The other thing is in terms of seasonal workers, and while I know there's amendment down, and I'd ask you to consider it carefully before taking a decision whether government is to oppose it or not, that the seasonal worker issue is a very, very real one. And also, and I heard other speakers refer to the performing arts, where very many musicians and small bands who would work periodically and through the season would get some level of support, because even in this lockdown period, or relatively lockdown period, when they can't perform in the normal places where they would, as other speakers have mentioned, they actually are providing entertainment online in many instances, providing online concerts and so on. But of course that doesn't give them any income. Indeed, some performers have put on these events as charity fundraising events to try and raise funds for some very important charities. So again, I would like government to acknowledge that, because they make a huge contribution to our society, to our mental health, in entertaining us and ensuring that there is some downtime for us to enjoy. And I think that they now find themselves with no potential to earn any income. And they are big contributors to our society. And I would like that you would examine this area with your officials and see what, if anything, can be done to support them. As with many other people over the last number of days, and the various broadcast shows that highlighted some people that were travelling, and the approach that was made to them by department staff at the airport, supported by Gardaí, some of whom are seconded to assist. And I see the necessity, of course, for us to have rules, and the necessity for us to have the enforcement of those rules, particularly if there is any fraud. But there are huge questions over just exactly what is going on, and I'm sure somebody did begin to allude to it earlier. I'm not a big listener to the Joe Duffy show, but I happened to hear some of it today. And there was a gentleman on who was married to a Romanian lady. She's herself an Irish citizen, and they were travelling in June to Romania to see to some ill family members of his wife, who, as I said, is an Irish citizen, and their children. And they were last to check in, or board rather, in the queue for a Ryanair flight, I think it was. This particular person had a legal background, and he was asked for his PPS number, and he said, "What are the reasonable grounds for you to be asking me that?" And the lady said, "You're leaving the country. So that's reasonable grounds." And he was in a position to inform her that no, under Section 250(16), that is not reasonable grounds. That, reasonable grounds would be, I saw Marc MacSharry working on a building site the other day, and I know he's claiming unemployment benefit. I mean, I would imagine that's reasonable grounds. So he challenged this, and the lady then said, right, fair enough, because he refused to give it, which was perfectly within his rights. And then the two Gardaí intervened, masquerading as an immigration check, asked for his passport, which he gave. And they then proceeded to take down details from the passport, and he queried this because he hadn't given permission for his details. And they said they were entitled to do it. Off the people went to Romania to see to their loved ones who were ill, and returned some weeks later to find that the child benefit payment was stopped, which is a universal payment. So whether you're a multimillionaire or whether you're penniless, you get child benefit. Now, that happening, I have a real problem with that. In the interview today, the gentleman in question, and this may not be true, but if it is true, I have a huge problem with it, said that the department, supported by Gardaí, are targeting certain flights, such as those to Romania or such as those to Poland. And that, in effect, amounts to ethnic or racial profiling, which is also something that is totally wrong. And if we have to have reasonable grounds, then you must establish and define what reasonable grounds are. You can't simply decide, well, here's a flight to Romania. I have a prejudiced view of Romanians who may be cheating the system, therefore we're going to check everybody getting on this plane. So that's fundamentally wrong, and it's not the sort of ethos that's captured under our Constitution or indeed the Proclamation. So I hope, and in listening to this show, I heard statements being read out for your department, and they fell a good bit short of what I would have expected in terms of the sort of explanations given the revelations, I gather, which were on various broadcast media all week. I just happened to hear that particular gentleman. But when he contacted and asked about the child benefit, he was told, oh yeah, you left the country. You're not allowed to get child benefit if you leave the country. Now, my oldest is 16. We've get child benefit all his life. And certainly pre-COVID, most years, but not every year, we were blessed enough to be able to go on holidays abroad. And I don't ever remember anybody taking issue with the child benefit payment or anything, and nor should they. I think this gentleman has made an official complaint to the department, and I don't know his name, but I think if someone in your department goes back to the Joe Duffy show today, you'll get all those details. And I think that person, and I'm glad he was on the flight and had his legal background, because it's important this information gets back. Because as I said, at best it was overzealous officers of the state, be they Gardaí or social welfare. At worst, as I said, it amounts to racial or ethnic profiling if we're selecting certain flights because we have a prejudice, or some people have a prejudiced view. Now, I know you don't, Minister, and knowing you personally, I know that you wouldn't operate in this way. So I think we need to get a handle on that very, very quickly. Then there's the issue of data sharing, and another speaker earlier on made reference to somebody who was contacted after the fact that their PUP had been stopped. They were out of the country, I think in Glasgow or somewhere, and the department were able to tell them the flight number, what time, when it took place, and all of the rest of it. And again, that's a problem. Of course we want to weed out actual fraud, but we can't have a quasi-presumption of guilt or likely guilt without reasonable grounds. And I think that that's the big issue which people have, society have. And the reality is people are entitled to go on holidays and go on holidays. They might even be gone for a month or 2 months to visit a loved one abroad, a parent that's dying or whatever. And, the cutting child benefit, I mean, I just thought that was ridiculous, mean-spirited, wrong. And I can't imagine why or how it could have been legal. So I hope that you would look into that issue and report to the House, because I think This isn't an issue for us to blindly defend our team, as it were, in your case, your officials. I think either there's something very fundamentally wrong, which requires addressing in the House so that we inform the nation, look, that did occur, it was wrong and it won't happen again, and the person's been apologised to and the system has been improved so that it cannot happen again. I think that the Irish public, having been appalled to hear what went on, as I said, various broadcasts of the last number of days, are entitled to that. Can I also say that in terms of your own staff, and while I know there's been issues, and I know that the phrase that was coined some time back was that speed trumps accuracy towards the beginning. But we've had a bit of time at things now, but I do want to pay tribute to the staff in your department who administered all of these schemes and managed to get money to people pretty quickly in the main, and I think they deserve a lot of credit. But in making that point, I want to give the analogy to other departments and other employees of the state who COVID, quite frankly, is great cover for doing nothing. I had a dealing with one state agency lately who there'll be nobody back in their office till the end of August. And we're working from home, and you talk to an answering machine. So most people who have been allowed to turn to work, particularly in the private sector, and I know my own staff in my own office didn't stop for an hour since the COVID started. We respected the lockdown, but worked from our office and dealt with people on phones and so on. But I think that there are many aspects of our state agencies, departments, local authorities that are using this as cover to lie on the couch and watch box sets, returning an odd call here and there and doing the maximum of the minimum to take over during this period. And I think productivity has fallen. I think it's unacceptable, and I think many in the private sector are back again at full tilt. I know you've worked at full tilt throughout the period. I know I have, and many colleagues, probably all, in the political world. But many are not, and that needs to be addressed. And whether it's opportunism, coming from the labour relations side, whether it's laziness, whether it's poor management, it needs to be addressed, because the country needs all its officials working at full tilt to get productivity levels up to the maximum so that we're getting through this crisis in the best possible way. So thank you very much, Minister. I hope you'll be able to take those points on board and look forward to your response. Thank you.